Welcome to Soulful Connections, where we skip the small talk and head right into the soul talk. I'm Amanda Solar, and each week we share the kinds of stories that remind us we're not alone. It's about being human, raw and unfiltered, just real talk. Let's connect. I am here with Dr. Patricia Timerman Barbosa de Silva. I am so excited, A, by your name. So beautiful and long and exotic and exciting. And I'm really excited to learn. I've decided, Dr. Timmerman, to learn all of my relationship tools and secrets from you in this moment.
Love it. Love it. Let's go for it.
That's great. So, can we just start by saying, behind you, as you and I are speaking, there's the book, Why Are We Fighting?
I actually have one right here.
Why Are We Fighting? I love the title. So, A, I would love to hear, how did you think of the title? What is it about? When did you write it?
Okay, so why are we fighting? And the subtitle is Actionable Strategies for Effective Communication. I am really big with making something qualitative kind of quantitative, or like doing actionable things. So the title itself came when I was starting the process of publishing, but I wrote the book. I started writing and I wrote the first chapter when I went on my honeymoon with my husband in the plane. I started writing the first chapter and then I kind of stopped. And then I was in a podcast with Dr. John DeBotch, who with his wife wrote the book Your Apology Sucks. A great
Ooh, I love
read,
that.
a great read, let me tell you. And I just like it ignited me to just finish the process. So the book is about this communication strategy I developed that I call it the IAP model, that stands for intention, action, perception. I started noticing a few years back, not only in my own relationships, but also in seeing couples. Now, I've been a psychotherapist, which is short for licensed mental health counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist, national board certified. My husband tells me I have way too many letters behind my name. So I started seeing patterns where a person's intention would get lost in translation by their action, meaning either the word used, nonverbals, like a roll of the eye, a stare, a silence. And then it was perceived by the other as something very unintentional that would lead to miscommunication. And I started seeing this pattern again in my relationship with my husband. There were a couple instances where what I expected from him by my behavior, when I calmly spoke with him about what did you receive from that, it was very different, right, from what I
Mhm.
wanted. Like an example is love a surprise party. Throw me a surprise party any time of the day. And the funniest thing is that in the 39 years that I've been alive, I've only had one surprise party. Even though I love them and I let everybody know. And my bestie, Melly, who lives in Tokyo now, was the only one who did it for me when I graduated from NYU. But I was going to do a surprise party for my husband in our first year together. We got back from jiu-jitsu. We were tired. I had all of our friends at Fujihana, which is like a restaurant that we love. And as we're going to leave, it dawns on me, I don't know if he likes. And so I asked him, do you like surprises? And he said, I do not like surprises. And then I told him, okay, I need to let you know, it's not going to be just us. I have at least like a handful, if not up to 10 friends that are waiting for us there. And he looked at me and he's like, I'm really happy you told me, because I was going in with the expectation and the energy only for the two of us. I'm exhausted. We just like had a full day. We trained jujitsu. So now I can prepare in the car to put a mask on for everyone else. Whereas had he just gone into the surprise party with me doing to him what I would want done to me,
Yeah. Yeah.
he would have put that mask on, but gotten very flustered with me, which would be an unintended result.
I love that, you took yourself out of the equation, because sometimes when you plan something like that, you also want, you're like, listen, I planned a surprise. I want there to be a surprise. This is what I planned. And that even becomes part of like the gift for yourself. So that was a beautiful act for you.
One of the things about the IAP model that I love when you go, and by the way, so we have the book, but the audiobook was released on the 16th of April.
Oh, nice.
And Brianna Vox did an amazing job in the audiobook. But one of the things about the IAP model is it requires, or it brings a lot of self-awareness, right? What are the things that I am doing and how come I'm doing that? What's my intention behind the action
Yes.
that I am, utilizing? So I've been with my husband for almost 15 years now, and it was a conversation just 2 weeks ago, when we were talking, and I told him like anything like medical appointments and stuff like that, I'm always very involved in his, and he's really not that involved in mine. And
God.
when we started talking, I told him, I'm like, you would actually prefer me to not be as involved in yours, wouldn't you? And he said yes, because again, he's a very private person. Whereas I want to be involved in mine, right? I want him to ask, hey, do you want me to go to the doctor's appointment with you?
Right.
So I was doing to him what I wanted done for me, and he was doing to me what he wanted done for him. So he would not involve himself unless
Yeah.
I asked. And so I realized that me asking to be present in his doctor's appointment, him saying yes, wasn't for him, it was for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that too. I mean, I think that's the way we move in the world oftentimes, because that's the lens through which we gaze.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I love that you can take this system that you've created and not only utilize it in your most intimate relationships, but utilize it in all
Any
relationships.
relationship. What I love about the IAP model is that it is based on communication itself.
Yeah.
So it's across relationships. It does not matter if it is collegial, like professional, familial, friendship. It's just, how do I make sure that the way that I'm expressing it is landing in the way that I want it to? And sometimes even becoming aware, like I can say there have been times when maybe I was triggered and I thought I was saying something in a kind way,
Yeah.
but externally it came out as a bark. And so I saw people's responses and I'm like, "Rrr," like, wait, this was like what? And I can either fight that response or I can acknowledge that the delivery came out in a way that it was not like that elicited a different response from what I expected.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can say that I fought through some responses until I asked, and then I learned, no, the way that you spoke wasn't the kind way that you thought you did. It came out as
Yeah.
a bark.
Yeah.
And I even like had my husband with me to like let me know, hey, when something come out as a bark, can we do a code word that you let me know? So I become more aware as to how I come across. And I've had people done the same with me, where they thought they were speaking kindly with me, but I'm like, no, 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 no. It was very aggressive and accusatory. So like,
Yeah.
let's shift this a little bit.
So have you always been a communicator? Have you always been somebody who, like, even as a little girl, when you were little, what what were you like? Was this kind of, was your vision to be somebody who works with people on this level? Did you want to be a writer?
Nope. Oh, that's funny. I always like, when you're little and you're play like professions and stuff like that, I would
Yeah.
either play being a teacher or I would play being a doctor. And oh my gosh, so many of my teddy bears had surgeries. I felt so bad for them. But I was kind of, and I will use this word not in a negative way, but I was groomed to be the medical doctor of the family.
Okay.
Um, but life had different plans for me. I'll say when I was at NYU and you're doing pre-med, pre-med is not a major, right? Even though it takes the
Right.
majority. of your academic
Yes.
curriculum. It's still not a major. So I did intro to psych and intro to political science, and I said no to psych. And my bachelor's was in political science.
Interesting.
But I was always an advocate.
Yeah.
Like I remember in school in Brazil, where I'm from, I would always be like part of all the school activities, doing all the banners, and I've always been an advocate. And so political science felt very natural for me when I was doing my AAs at the Honors College in Miami-Dade. Like I was working with Senator Wilson. I was like on a panel talking about the standardized FCAT and the emotional impact it had on children, because like that was the first argumentative paper I wrote on, and I saw so much. Mind you, like this college student in her early 20s in a panel with like other professionals. But I've always been an advocate.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that in mental health is a big space to advocate for and with, right? And
Yeah.
when I moved to the US, I didn't speak any English. So like I
Wow.
lost my voice. I felt silent. Like I in the first high school that I went to, no one spoke any other language but English. And I would like eat in the bathroom because I couldn't talk to anybody. And I felt so like introverted, which is the opposite of who I am. As you can see, I
Right.
can't stop talking. Um, and I think that losing my voice made finding my voice so important. And I love that I found a field where I'm able to either individually, directly with clients, help them find their voices and advocate for themselves. And each person has a different understanding of what finding their voice is like. Some are loud, some are not. Um, and then in a bigger space, when I'm able to speak with professionals and the trainings on gaps in the systems, like I started Advocate to Create. I mean, the name of my firm is very specific, right? Advocate to
Right.
Create, because in my master's I worked at an immigration law firm, and I would talk about the gap between the psychological and the legal and breaking barriers. And so like this
Yeah.
is speaking to professionals to give voices to those who don't have them, to understand that. So I guess that's where communication
Wow.
became really focused.
That is so fascinating because you came to the US not speaking English, and so you lost your voice. And I'm wondering if maybe that combination of watching how people were reacting and what people were doing, because when you don't have a voice, you're really leaning in to your powers of observation. So you've got this wonderful blend of that observational piece that maybe you had to hone, I don't know, combined with, your naturally vivacious personality. And maybe that's really interesting to me. I can't imagine going somewhere for an extended period of time and not speaking the language.
I mean, that was an interesting experience. Like I'll say that. And I mean, I came to Miami, Florida, so like there's a melting pot of cultures here. And when
Yes.
I left that initial high school, because the academic school year in Brazil is from January to December. So we came here in January, and that's the middle of the academic year. So we were able to go to this school because we came here in the middle of the academic year. And then I transferred to this high school, Michael Crop Senior High. And it was, when you talk about a melting pot, you would have like the Brazilian table, the Argentinian table, the Haitian table, the Russian table, the French table, the Jamaican table, the Colombian table. Like, and I would make it a point to, I love my Brazilian peeps, but I would try to make it a point to not go to the Brazilian table because I really wanted to learn
Good for
English.
you.
And so like it's putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. Now, I do want to mention something because I think it becomes really important. When you talk about being communication or anything, I think anything requires balance, right? And everything has to do be in moderation. And the reason that I say that is I think possibly because I developed the IAP, there are certain people that were in my life that I became so observant of them and so worried for them, like knowing their anxiety and what causes
Yeah.
anxiety for that, it became too much. right? And
Yes.
I kind of like when you think of others before yourself, but not even because others want you to, right? And
Yeah.
so I've learned that, okay, everything has, even the healthiest things, when it's to the extreme, can become unhealthy. And again, that comes back to the awareness of self, or when you notice something goes
Yeah.
wrong and you're like, okay, what do I learn from this
Yes.
experience for next time?
So you mentioned your day to day. You said my firm. Can you explain more about what your firm is?
Yes. So advocate to create, and the two is the number two, so it's A to C for short. And quick little anecdote: I used to work at the 1-800 suicide when I developed Advocate to Create, and I would come back at 5 a.m. My shift was the like 7 p.m. till 5 a.m. And I lived in South Beach, and I would go to there's a Starbucks right in front, and they would open around that time. And I remember I'm not tired and I'm going there, and I'm like, I want to create something that it's advocacy, right? I want to do trainings. I want to, again, the immigration piece, the
Yep.
suicide piece, like that's the advocacy to create, to
Yes.
bring voices to people. So it started as a training. And then my friend Scott Spreadley, we called him Scott the artist, and he helped me create the A to C logo. He took his life in 2014. So like that logo is an homage to him. I say we can ship the color, but the logo stays.
Yes.
Which I don't know if you can see it because it's really oh, right here. This is the logo.
Oh, I love it. I
Yeah.
am so sorry for the loss of your friend, and what a beautiful tribute.
Oh, absolutely. And so what we do and Advocate to Create, I opened it in 2012.
Okay.
So we provide direct services. When I say we, I have this wonderful therapist, Michelle Hart, that works with me, and she's amazing. Talk about the spirit of empathy, like that's her.
Mhm.
And so we work with individuals and couples. We provide psychoeducational trainings. And then I do keynote speaking, and we also compose clinical evaluation for immigration purposes. We are licensed in Florida, so anywhere in Florida, we're able to provide services. And then keynotes, and things like that, I'm able to do it from anywhere. But direct service, because of licensure limitations, is in Florida.
Yeah. Well, that's really beautiful. And there's overlap actually, because I worked for a suicide prevention firm in my
Oh,
past.
wow.
We called the Live Project, which I'm still very connected to. And I learned so much about how prevalent suicide is. It really is becoming kind of a pandemic in a sense. The communities that are affected by mental health are pretty much everybody. The community is all of us.
I mean, for sure.
Yeah,
For sure. I feel like everybody goes through stress. Not everybody will have like disproportionate anxiety.
sure.
I struggle with anxiety when there's a stressor, I overthink things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then I have I have this mood scale I developed. You know, when you go to the doctors and they tell you like what's your pain level from 1 to 10, and you're like, I have no
Yes.
idea. So I created this mood scale. Damn, it's not part of my book. I should do I post that one out.
Next book.
Next one. I actually just started writing the next one on
That's great.
Saturday, which I'm excited about. But I asked my clients to identify like what is your mood? What was the worst, right? Every
Mhm.
symptom, physical symptom, psychological symptom, that's your 10, right? And then go down. Like,
Mhm.
so for me, my anxiety is at its worst once it hits me physically, and like it
Mm.
envelops my chest, and I get into that I can't do anything. I'm frozen. Right.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, what precedes that? So I've become very aware of like what's my one, my two, my three. So if I am at a 4 or at a 5, I go ask my husband for a hug.
Yeah.
Right. Or I know if I'm
That's
at a
great.
6, I either need to walk around or go to the gym, because if he hits a 7,
Mental health is just, we have brains and we have minds and we have emotions. We come with that as human beings. So it just is a natural outgrowth of who we are, and we need support. And that is part of being human.
yeah.
I'm also thinking if you're okay with my asking this, to suffer the loss of somebody you're close to by suicide is also, suicide grief is it's a really complicated grief.
It is
Right?
very different from other types of grief.
That's right. And grief is hard in and of itself. Grief is, like many emotions, complicated, but grief, when it's associated with suicide, is extremely complicated. May I ask how you navigated that and if that experience influences your work today?
So after I left the 1-800 suicide, I went from prevention and intervention to postvention. I facilitated for about 10 years for survivors of suicide loss group through the Florida Initiative for Suicide Prevention. So this was when I graduated pre while I was a registered intern. So I want to say like 2012, 2013 is when I started running the groups. And because of that, I became very aware of suicide grief. And then my friend took his life in 2014. I remember, so one of the prevalent aspects of suicide grief is that one is you go through all of the days that preceded to kind of try to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And because we are rational
Yeah.
beings, when we cannot rationalize the puzzle, the pieces of the puzzle that are missing, we either assign blame to others or to ourselves,
Yes.
right? What I should have done, all the what ifs, and this alternative reality of all the what ifs.
Right.
Um, our kinship, our relationship, of course, also impacts that. But really, like the going through those days, and the guilt take take a hold a lot of the times. When I lost my friend, I remember in the group, now I was no longer just the facilitator. I was the facilitator and I was a member of that group that we
Right.
all didn't want to be part of.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember thinking, wow, he was, not to minimize it, but I minimized my own grief. And I said, he was just a friend. Here I'm dealing with parents that lost their kids, spouses that lost their partner, kids that lost their parents. And I remember the group telling me, don't minimize your grief. I'm like, you know
Hmm.
what? You're right. Like, why am I minimizing? Like, oh, I was just the sibling, my parents hurt. No, like, we can't minimize that. We lost somebody that we love.
Right.
Um, and there were things that would trigger me at first. Um, he loved Halloween. Halloween would come, I would cry. Like today, I'm
Yeah.
able to speak very nonchalantly about it. It's
Yeah.
been what, 12 years now.
Right.
Um, but then it was a little bit more difficult. There were things, if we would see somebody jump, like in a scene, my husband would immediately freak out, pause, and look at me. And then as
Mm.
I started like being okay with it, he was still not sure. So he would pause, freak out,
Mm.
look at me like, what do you need from me right now? I'm like, no, no, no. Like I
Nice.
I'm good. I'm good. But one thing that I just do want to say, if anyone here is a survivor of suicide loss, is understanding that when it comes to suicide loss, um, as you know as well, it's not 1 year, right?
Right.
That first year is so real. That first year you're existing. That first year you're between the day that it happened and today's date. And you step, like you're taken into that day and then you need to be brought back into this day. The second year is real, but it's a reality we don't want. So we go from existing to surviving. The third year is when we start kind of like adjusting to this new normal. It's not this cookie cutter, but in the 10
Mm.
years that I facilitated, every 3 years I would have a new cohort. And there were a few
Mm.
studies, and my dissertation was on suicide grief, and there were a few studies that talked about homicidal and
Mm.
suicidal grief and the 3 years that served as evidence to my empirical experience. So it's important to know, right? It's a journey.
Yeah. That is really important to share. And I have to add, what a great relationship you and your husband have. It sounds like he was so protective and could see that this was something that was emotionally dangerous in a sense for you, and he was watching out for that. And I just love that.
Let me tell you, like the IAP, when I was listening to Brianna Vox, as she was, through the audiobook, and I needed to listen to everything I'm listening to that, I was like, damn, like the IAP was really born a lot from our relationship. Now, I had past relationships that taught me who was the partner I didn't want to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the bonus worksheets that I have here is the me in 3D and the we in 3D. And they go through the same thing, but one is thinking about me as a person, and the other one is thinking about the we-ness, the relationship.
Mhm.
So the we in 3D is who I was, who I am, and who I want to become. And I use the acronym MAC. What is it about the person I am today that I'd like to maintain to my future person? What's the things, like the either attributes or behaviors, or aspirations, or whatever it is that I do that I would like to amplify or do more of for my future self? And what are the things that I'd like to change? And the change, I then go through like breaking it down to its easiest step to start. And then part two is how I see myself, how I believe others see me, and how I'd like to be seen. And I have a couple different things there. And in a few of my relationship, there's a specific relationship that I think taught me a lot about the partner I didn't want to be because of the partner that I was. And one of the boundaries with myself was I never want to walk on eggshells again. That was really important to me. So even in my relationship now, there was a time when I'm like, hey, I notice I'm like balancing some of the things that like I am gonna say, and is hitting my boundary with myself. You cannot know what you don't know. My preamble, what I was saying, like the rationale for me sharing this with you,
Mhm.
that's my preamble, is you cannot know what you don't know. And I'm letting you know I'm hitting this boundary with myself. And that allowed my partner to become aware. I was like, oh, okay, like maybe let me not nitpick so much on the words that are being used. Like, how can we, ameliorate the current relationship or communication?
I love that. Um, okay, so I'm going to kind of segue into random soulful questions. One question I love asking people, and it's a tricky one. What do you think get wrong about you?
Ooh, I can tell you when I was young, my dad said that when I enter a room, people love me or hate me, which was very true because the way that I look, I'm super fair. Right? I do not look Brazilian at all. There is a term in Portuguese that's called patricinha, which is funny because it just happened to be my name, right? But patricinha
Yes.
is like a jab, right? Is that how you call them here? It's like a person who's very much like material, clueless. Think of
Okay.
it clueless, like that would be
Yes.
patricinha. Not
Oh,
always with a good heart, but more like materialism. And so when I
got
was
it.
young, because of my looks, that's what I like people would assume from me a lot.
Got
Um,
it. They didn't recognize your depth.
no. And some people would want to get to know me and some people wouldn't because of just what I look like. I
Right.
tend to stand out because I am super like fair. I'm like, when people want to take my blood, I say I'm transparent. You can see like the color of my vein. It's insane. Um, I don't know today. I really don't know. And I think in a way, and this is not meant to sound callous, I don't know if I care.
Yeah, I get that. I love
Okay.
it. And
Okay.
that's actually probably the state that we all need to get to in the most beautiful way in order to live your most authentic life.
Yeah. Like I feel like for the people that I know whom I love and I'm vested in,
Hmm.
I care. I can tell you a recent relationship where I think maybe I cared too much. And then I realized that, okay, now what this person is saying is just, it's not me at all.
Yeah, isn't that
So it's
interesting?
just
Yeah.
maybe like a boundary setting there.
Yeah.
But in general, yeah,
What trait do you love in someone else? It's a trait that maybe just draws you in.
my husband. One of the things that I am proud and he's just the person who he is. The moment that, like, if you're having a conversation with him, he says something and he asserts something, even if he is like 90% sure after the conversation, he's going to look it up. And if he's right, he will not tell you. But if he's wrong, he will reach out and say, hey, I was wrong about this thing. He's not like, it doesn't hit his pride to be right
Yes.
or wrong. And I want to say, like, I've learned a lot, and I like to believe that I've taken some of that from
Yeah.
him, and always looking at, when my father-in-law who moved in with us, he's like, this family is very data driven. I'm like, yeah, like, we always research
Yeah.
what he said, not to prove that you're right or wrong, but because we want to understand, like, where is it coming from, and we want to learn more about it. So yeah.
Well, that makes me happy because I really think we would all be served, all of us, by growing and evolving and learning. And you can only do that when you're just not taking being wrong personally, because we
Yeah.
can't be right about everything, and we change and grow. And I think that's a beautiful trait. What about a pet peeve? Something that maybe irritates you, and it could be something that doesn't irritate anybody else, but it irritates you.
I can tell you an easy pet peeve of mine is when people leave the water running without using the water.
Mm. Yes.
That's a huge pet peeve of mine. Like, if somebody's washing dishes and they are like in the washing process and the water's running, I'll just turn it off.
Yes.
So that is huge with me. Um, I'm trying to see more of like a personal thing. Okay, I have one. When people will maybe imply that I didn't know or do something, like, oh, you should do this, as opposed to
Mm.
ask, oh, have you done this?
Yeah.
But it depends who it comes from.
And is it something like, for example, if I say to one of my daughters, if I say, like, don't forget your backpack, and she already remembered her backpack, she gets so irritated.
Yeah.
She's like, I did not need that reminder. And is it kind of like that?
Yes. So actually, towards the end of the book, I wrote this because I was gonna make coffee for me and the hubby, and we were watching something, and I was gonna ask, you don't want to finish watching it? And I paused myself because I'm like, why am I already assuming he doesn't want to? And so instead, I shifted to, would you like to continue watching it?
Nice.
Because since I disliked it and I was able to catch my thought before it came out of my mouth, I was able to then shift it.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about a book that shifted you, or shifted, or made an impact, or made you think, or that you kind of always go back to?
The Seven Principles for Making Marriage Work is a
Mm.
book that I enjoy by John Gottman, and I use it a lot with my clients because I love, like, he's sarcastic, and I appreciate the sarcasm. Like, the marriage clinic I use when I teach uh, because of him as well. So from a mental health perspective, I do that. Outside of reading clinical books, my go-to are like fiction books, and I love CSI
Ooh.
books. I am huge with like Jack Reacher. We have like almost all the Jack Reacher books,
Yes.
or it would be that or Holocaust books. Those were the ones that,
I think there's something for me. Um, I I am elevated by reading about the Holocaust, which I understand might sound odd, but I think it's because there's so many lessons from it, so many lessons from it. And it is the worst of humanity.
yeah,
And then sometimes within it, you see the best of humanity. And when I think about people who somehow are able to love post
yeah,
Holocaust,
to
it
believe.
to believe, to hope, to trust, to love anything that is good, like Viktor Frankl, to find meaning in the most heinous, worst things. there is something that I need that in my life. I need, I don't really have the words to express and explain that, and I'll have to think about that later.
But as you were saying, like, because both you and I worked in with suicide, and my mother-in-law, when I started dating my husband, said, "Well, there are people for everything." And I'm like, yeah, because like when like, some people will say, "Well, isn't it heavy? Wasn't it like you work with grief? Isn't it heavy?" And I'm like, no. Like there are moments that are heavy. There have been certain circumstances that have stayed with me, and I've had to like process it and write certain cases, but 90% is we see through, we see
Yeah.
the resilience. We see, so like I agree, like as I'm reading, like I have family that have died, I have like, and so when I read, and I think a lot of it is to not let it happen again, but two is like you can't believe the cruelty, but the resilience, the fact that people survived, like what kept them alive was the hope that it was like something that we, it
Mhm.
wasn't food, it wasn't like you see, like it was a monitor, it was pure mental exertion and that kept you alive. It's beyond the physical. And so I agree with you. I think because of what we do, we tend to look at things maybe in a different lens. And it allows us to see this resilience, which I think is not even the word doesn't encompass the greatness.
And I do think there's something about it for me also that I think, well, geez, I mean, whatever horror I'm experiencing, even if it is a horror, as sometimes happens, I can search through the rubble for the golden
Yeah.
lesson, like certain people who are just kind of heroic people to me, like Ellie Wiesel, Edith Eger. They're just heroic people
Yeah.
to me. Um, they're teachers.
So I went to Israel in December. We did
Mm.
with Birthright a volunteer work. And one of the things that I got from there whenever I've gone to Israel has been a very spiritual experience, but it was just the love for life. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what happens, like we just need to keep on living. And that's how we win. And so
that's
that
beautiful.
came up. Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that you just shone the light on that. Um, well, you just made me think of teaching. You said you teach. What do you teach?
So I adjunct at universities, and so it would be like in mental health, like of course,
Mhm.
being under psychopathology or crisis intervention. Um, I'm actually toying with the idea and speaking with the university about like in using my book to do couples counseling, in addition to the seven
Great.
principles for making marriage work and other Chapman's book that I think are so great. But that's what I do. I enjoy teaching a lot. It's a fun process. Getting to see the people that are new people that are going into the profession because we become gatekeepers for the profession, right? Not everybody. It's
Yes.
geared to be in this profession. If you're thinking of going into mental health because you're great at talking and giving advice, even though I am talking a lot, I get that. uh like it's more about listening and understanding what are the shifts that you see and being able to identify patterns. The majority uh of the models or theories that we use in grief, in couples, individual, is about identifying patterns and what is the gap that we see. Like the intention, action, perception was realizing these three different things that comprise communication and how it can lead to misunderstandings. Um, so it's a really cool experience to be able to teach and have the students be excited about what they're learning.
Well, as we close out our conversation, I know you can't whittle this down to a tip, but if you had to just say, when I shut down and go into the living room and talk to my husband, if you had to give like a tip, just one of the many for couples, for relationships, what would you give?
What I would say is pause. Meaning, let's say that I said something and my partner reacted in a way that was very distinct from what I thought it was going to be. Pause. And instead of reacting back, because we're constantly reacting to each other, I don't know where the action started, but we're continuously reacting to each other simultaneously, right? So I'm reacting to you. No, I'm reacting to you, right? So if we're able
Yes.
to pause and think about how did my delivery land, it's kind of like that moment,
Yes.
right? Like how did it land? Because this was my intention. When we're able to pause as opposed to being like that smart ass quick mouth,
Mm.
it allows space to disseminate and understand. It's like, hey, this is not what I meant. Like an example I can give was when I was walking with hubby and he said, he was telling me a frustration with me, and he's like, you always. And I immediately paused him and I said, the word always, it will make me think about the times when I didn't do whatever you're going to say that I did, because I know that's going to come. Can we rephrase it? And he said, that's fair. A lot of the times. And then he said what he needed to say. And I'm like, I can understand how that comes across that way. Let me try to work on it.
Nice. And then the podcast Soulful Connections comes from a larger ecosystem that I've built called Soulful Living, leaping off of my last name, Solar. When you hear that phrase soulful living, what do you think of?
I think of soul, right? Like digging deep, not being in the surface. So, like having deep and meaningful conversations, either with myself, like who am I with myself, and who am I with others. That's what comes to my mind.
I love it. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing. I think we cannot talk enough and learn enough about how we are connecting and communicating and redefining and defining our relationships. So thank you for the work that you do. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really loved to be able to have this convo with you. And I'll just remind everybody, you can find the book at Amazon. You can find it on Audible. Um, Definitely worth the read or the listen.
I will pop a link in the show notes.
Beautiful.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. Thank you for being a valued part of the Soulful community. Thank you to William Aronson for writing, recording, and producing the Soulful Connections theme song. And finally, always know you're not alone. We are connected. We're all in this thing together, and you and your story are important. Let's just keep on connecting.